Hey guys, welcome back to the Leelee Knits YouTube channel. In this video, I'm going to teach you all about Mosaic Crochet. Mosaic Crochet looks complicated, I know, but it's really super easy and fun, and I know you'll love it once you get the basics down. After you've completed this tutorial, you'll be able to make the Aztec Mosaic Crochet Blanket Wrap, which is a free pattern that you can find on the Leelee Knits website. I've linked to the wrap and the gorgeous Knit Picks High Desert yarn that I used to create it in the description box for this video. Before we get started, I just want to give you a quick overview of how to read a Mosaic Crochet chart. I know the chart can look quite a bit intimidating, especially if you're new to color work, but I promise that it's actually pretty simple to get the idea. Okay, so here we have an example chart. This chart is actually the first 15 rows of my Aztec blanket wrap pattern, which I've posted for free on the Leelee Knits website. The first thing to note is how to read the rows based on the row number that you're on. As you can see, the far right side lists the odd numbered rows and the far left side lists the even numbered rows. When reading a Mosaic Crochet chart, the odd numbered rows are read from right to left and the even numbered rows are read from left to right. So in this example, we would read row 1 as the white squares from right to left and row 2 as the white squares from left to right. Since one row on the chart represents 2 rows on your work, when you read the chart from right to left, each square that you see represents 1 stitch on the front of your work. And when you read the row from left to right, each square represents 1 stitch on the back side of your work. In Mosaic Crochet, you change colors every 2 rows. So if we look at this chart, we start with color A for rows 1 and 2. And then we switch to color B for rows 3 and 4, and then go back to color A for rows 5 and 6, and continue on switching colors every 2 rows. You'll know which color you're supposed to be using for each row by looking at the first and last stitch of the row. For example, if we look at rows 11 and 12, the first and last squares are gray, which is color B. The next thing you need to know is what type of stitch each square represents. The good news is there are only 3 stitches used for Mosaic Crochet, and I bet you already know them all. The first 2, chain and single crochet, are pretty self-explanatory, and I'm assuming that you already know the basics of crochet and can work a chain and a single crochet. And if you already know how to make a double crochet, then you are set, because that Mosaic double crochet is just a double crochet worked 3 rows below. I'll demonstrate the stitch later, so don't worry too much about how it's made. Now you're probably thinking that's great, but how do the stitches translate on the chart? This is probably the trickiest part to understand, but honestly, it's not that bad once you see it in action, which I'll show you in a bit. For now, just bear with me while I go over the translation on this chart. Let's start with the right side rows. Remember that the right side rows are the odd numbered rows, so in this chart we read them from right to left. When working on a right side row, if the square is the same color as your yarn and it does not have an X in it, that means that you need to work a single crochet. If it does have an X, then you need to work a Mosaic double crochet, and if it's the opposite color, then you need to make a chain and skip over the stitch. Now let's go over the backside rows, which are read from left to right and are represented by the even numbers on the chart. When working on a backside row, if the square is the same color as your yarn, even if it has an X, that means that you need to work a single crochet. And if it's the opposite color, then you make a chain and skip over the stitch, just like with the right side row. So the backside rows are only made of chains and single crochets. The Mosaic double crochet stitches are only worked on the right side rows. The last thing that I want to go over before we start is the red lines on the chart, which are used to block off the section of the chart that is repeated. The squares outside the red lines are not part of the repeat and therefore only completed once per row. In this chart, we start our rows by working the stitch represented by the first square and then repeat the sequence inside the red lines over and over until there are only 2 stitches remaining. At this point, we complete the final 2 stitches by following the last 2 squares. That's it! So now that you can read a Mosaic Crochet chart, you're ready to start your first swatch of Mosaic Crochet. If you want to crochet along with me, you'll need 2 colors of worsted weight yarn, a size I9 or 5mm crochet hook, and scissors. Okay, to start off the swatch, we make a foundation chain that is a multiple of 8 plus 4. We use a multiple of 8 because the repeat section contains 8 squares, and then add 3 for the 3 additional end stitches. Since our first row will be single crochets, we need to add an extra chain because we will begin by single crocheting into the second chain from the hook. So to keep the swatch smaller, I'm going to chain 28, which is 8 times 3, 24, plus 4. After chaining 28, we work our first row of the chart. Since all of the squares are color A, which is the cream color that I made my foundation chain with, this means that every stitch in row 1 is a single crochet. Also, looking at row 2, we can see that every stitch going back is also color A. So we are going to make the first 2 rows by single crocheting in every stitch. Once you reach the end of row 1, turn your work, chain 1, and single crochet all the way back. At the end of row 2, we switch the yarn over to color B for the next 2 rows. To switch colors seamlessly, begin your last stitch by yarning over and pulling through the first loop with color A. Then drop the yarn for color A and pull the remaining loop through with color B. Now you're ready to work rows 3 and 4 with color B. Rows 3 and 4 are super easy. As you can see, they are all the same color as the yarn we are working with, and there are no exits, so that means that every stitch is a single crochet. I'm going to work rows 3 and 4, switching back to color A at the end of row 4, and meet you back for rows 5 and 6. At the end of row 4, we switch back to color A on the last stitch so that we can use it for the next 2 rows. Like rows 3 and 4, the next 2 rows are all single crochets. So once again, to save time, I'll complete rows 5 and 6 and meet you back for rows 7 and 8 where we start doing a little bit more than just single crochet stitches. Okay guys, I bet you're pretty bored with the single crochet stitches at this point. Rows 7 and 8 are a bit more fun, I promise. This is where we actually start interpreting the chart and practicing Mosaic crochet. Looking at the chart, we can see that the first stitch before the repeat is a single crochet. We then begin the repeat by chaining 1 and skipping the next stitch. The next 3 stitches are 3 single crochets, followed by a chain 1 skip, and then another single crochet, chain 1 skip, and the last single crochet of the repeat. Not so bad, hey? So now we just continue repeating the sequence of 8 stitches until there are 2 stitches remaining. And now we complete the last 2 stitches, which are a chain 1 followed by a single crochet. Now that we finished row 7, we're ready to begin row 8. Row 8 is read in the opposite direction as row 7. So we begin row 8 by chaining 1 and then making a single crochet in the first stitch, followed by a chain 1 and skip the next stitch. We then complete our repeat sequence in the reverse order. Another way to look at it is to chain and skip where there was a chain and skip in row 7, and single crochet where there was a single crochet in row 7. We're basically just working back to the beginning on the back side of our work. Now that we're at the last stitch of the row, we single crochet into the last stitch, changing back to color A, and turn our work. Rows 9 and 10 are where we get to start to work with the mosaic double crochet stitch. But first we have to work our first stitch of the row, which is a single crochet. The first stitch of the repeat sequence is a mosaic double crochet stitch. To make a mosaic double crochet stitch, you make a yarn over your hook and work a double crochet stitch into the single crochet stitch 3 rows below, making sure that you are working in front of your work. This makes the double crochet appear on the right side of your work and overlaps the rows below where the color A is on the chart. The next stitch is the opposite color from what we are working with, so we chain 1 and skip a stitch. Then we single crochet into the next stitch. Since the mosaic double crochet and the chain were not worked into the row below, we have to remember to skip the 2 stitches that are in line with the mosaic double crochet and chain before working the single crochet. Next, we chain 1 and skip a stitch, followed by another mosaic double crochet. Chain 1, skip a stitch, mosaic double crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch again, and we've completed the first repeat of the 8-stitch sequence. Now we just repeat the sequence twice more until there are 2 stitches remaining. The last 2 stitches are a mosaic double crochet followed by a single crochet. Row 10 is much simpler than row 9 because we do not make the mosaic double crochet stitches on the back side of the work. We simply crochet back to the beginning by working the stitches in the reverse order and single crocheting wherever there is a mosaic double crochet or single crochet. At the end of row 10, we switch to color B and turn our work to begin row 11. For row 11, we work our first single crochet and then chain 1 and skip a stitch for our first stitch of the repeat. Next, we make a mosaic double crochet followed by a single crochet and another mosaic double crochet. We then continue following the chart like we did for the previous rows until we reach the end of the row. At this point, we've completed the chart up to the end of row 11 and are about to start row 12. I think that you should have the idea now of what you need to do to complete the swatch since I've demonstrated each stitch a few times. I recommend that you try to complete the remaining rows on your own just for a little bit more practice. Like I said earlier, it seems a lot more complicated than it is. And once you practice a bit, you'll find that mosaic crochet is a really fun way to incorporate color work into your crochet. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more crochet how-tos and visit the Leelee Knits website to find the free pattern for my Aztec mosaic crochet blanket wrap and many more free patterns and crochet tips. Bye for now!